What's up, my know-it-alls? It's time for another episode of Loki. Specifically, we're talking about Season 2 here. Episode 4, titled The Heart of the TVA. Before we get into all that, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow in the algorithm, lets everyone know that you want to be part of the know-it-all nation. Now, why is that important? Because the more we grow this channel, the more we're gonna be able to do. We're having fun here, we're excited. Help us grow the know-it-all nation so that we can keep on giving you all the great, amazing content that you wanna see from us. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. Man, I tell you what, this is not a bad episode. I'm excited by this episode. This is a very, very good episode. A lot of things happen, and one of those things is that we finally come full circle. Oh yeah, Ouroboros earns his name today. The very beginning, the very nose tip, we're talking right after the previously on, we join one Ravonna Renslayer and Miss Minutes. And if you remember the end of last episode, Miss Minutes promised that she knew secrets. She knew things. And one of those things that she knew is that Ravonna has been there before. So she shows her. It's really cool, this little teeny miniature that they have. And I'm very much assuming they filmed them off it because you could tell the little green screen on it. Anyway, because everything is teeny tiny, basically, because it's all in camera and you see them on the thing. Anywho, it's this tiny diorama of the entire throne room. And you see that moment that we had only seen before in the very beginning of the first episode when Loki was going around, which you're gonna come back to that too, because this entire episode is looping back to the first episode.
For us, for all time.
Always.
Ravonna Renslayer, you are quite a marvel. I will be proud to lead with you.
And you get that moment where he's like, I couldn't have done this without you, this and that. And you get this implication from Miss Minutes that Ravonna and most of everyone who's in the TVA, they were in He Who Remains army. Specifically, Ravonna was one of his generals, probably the highest ranking general. And so he tells her, he's like, go ahead, go to the TVA, I'll be right behind you. And she's like, TVA waits. And he's like, I'll be right behind you, I promise. As soon as she leaves, he summons Miss Minutes and he says to her, it's time. And she's like, you sure? And he's like, yeah, it's time. You go ahead and erase everyone's memories, get everything right for everybody. And she realizes he's been taking their memories for a while. So she asks Miss Minutes, well, what's next? And Miss Minutes says to her,
that we don't need him. Maybe we never did.
And I was like, wow. I'm telling you, man, it only gets worse in terms of how just a bad dude. Talk about a bad breakup, man. A bad breakup for sure. Miss Minutes is definitely that. Then we join Victor. Victor Timely has his first glimpse at the TVA. It's an amazing moment. Jonathan Majors plays the role excellently. He really does well, looking shocked and awed, so to speak. And because literally he shows up in the conference room and right behind him are the giant faces that are his face. Like, how do you deal with that? How do you suddenly walk into a place and you're like, oh, hi, big giant statue faces of me? I don't know, I guess it kind of sounds like my favorite dream. Anyway, so that's when Mobius, Hunter B-15, and Loki show up. Sylvie. And they're all like, look, we need your help, regardless of whatever. And he's like, whoa, everything's been a little fast for him. And they're like, listen, because Mobius is like, look, I understand, but we need your help like right now. And it's like, all right, bro, I get it. Then we cut to this moment where Hunter B-15 is talking with the other judge. And they're talking about Dox and her crew, and the other judge tells her, someone said to me the TVA had to change, and they had to change right now. Dox believes in this institution. That's why she was willing to go ape nuts in order to save it. She says she needs her mind changed. And B-15's like, I don't know, how am I supposed to do that? And she goes, you'll figure it out. You change my mind. And I was like, okay, that's fair. That's totally legit. So then we go downstairs. Literally, Loki and Mobius take Victor to meet his hero, Ouroboros. And they walk in and they're introducing this whole thing, and Ouroboros is like, Oh man, I was taught everything I knew about the loom by a 19th century inventor named Victor Timely. And Victor Timely learned everything he knew about time travel and engineering and whatnot from Ouroboros. It's this causal loop that in essence it's like a snake eating its own tail. Right? Okay. So they have a thing set up. And while they're explaining and talking through it, Victor Timely's walking around and you kind of stop paying attention to them as they're talking. And really the focus is on Timely because he's clearly seeing something they're not seeing. And he explains what it is that he thinks they need because they're like, well, the thing won't, we could try to put it in, but the problem is it won't work because this and that. And that's when he reaches into his bag and he pulls out the thing that he said earlier, last episode, makes time travel possible. And a good friend of mine online, he explained to me, he pointed out this particular beam. And as you can clearly see, there's a huge correlation between that little hand doodad and Kang's time chair. So clearly the same thought process, if not the same technology. So that's immediately what they're trying to do. They're going to have to figure out how to retrofit that little ball thingy to go inside the other device that Ouroboros had already created. And Mobius and them leave them to that. There's a brief exchange with Sylvie kind of getting frustrated because Mobius is like, who wants to get a piece of pie? And she's like, oh my God, really? The whole thing is falling apart? That's just another day at the office. We get another hint drop. I say hint drop because remember the manual? Okay, another Chekhov's gun situation where 2 episodes had passed and the manual had been referenced. Well, of course, last episode, it was going to be important. Now, we've had several episodes where someone has pointed out to our boy Mobius, have you even bothered looking on the sacred timeline to see where you are? Are you afraid it's from a branch or whatever else? So who he is on the sacred timeline has now come up twice. Twice I can remember, but I'm pretty sure it's one more time than that. We have a theory here at the Know-It-All House. Our theory is one of 2 things. Either A, Mobius is going to end up running the entire TVA because he's a company man, this and that, and it's literally going to be he didn't care about the sacred timeline. He didn't care about who he was on the sacred timeline. He cares about the sacred timeline. Or B, he's a bad guy on the sacred timeline. We're going to find out he's something really bad, and this version of him is the best version of him he could be. And I think I'm okay with either of those things, to be honest. But it's just a very interesting approach that they take. So then we cut to Dox and her crew inside the big orange cell area and whatnot. And of course, Brad is trying to talk his way. He's like,
all right, everybody, we don't have any weapons. We don't really have the numbers. I think if we put our heads together and if we just try to figure this out, we can get out of this room and we can get back to our lives. Huh?
And Dox is kind of upset by him. That's when B-15 walks in. B-15 walks in and she's flat out tells him, she's like, look, you guys, and she tries to give a speech. She tells her, I know you care. And you know, if nothing else, you know that I care. So we just need to figure out how to care together, so to speak, all right? Give love and help a chance or whatever. I don't know. It's an interesting moment because you begin to see Dox is actually listening because Dox herself does very much believe in what the TVA is. Meanwhile, everything's getting worse. The place is shaking, the loom is breaking, and it's not going to end up going well. Loki and Sophie have a conversation where they talk a little bit, and they're in the pie room. I guess we're going to call it that. And at one point, she's like, so we have to play God? And as soon as she said it, I went, it's because you are gods. To which my boy goes,
we are gods.
And I was like, yeah, you are. Go be the god of mischief or whatever. There's also, we have a good friend of mine, Chad, online on Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter. He and I have this working theory that Loki is most likely going to become the god of stories. Go do some homework if you'd like to know who the god of stories is. It has to do with the multiversal Avengers and the Exiles and all kinds of other stuff. Trust me when I tell you, I'm very interested to seeing his arc or where he goes. Either that, or I believe firmly Loki's most likely going to end up dying in this Tom Hiddleston form, And I think, Mrs. Know-It-All asked if I thought Sophie was gonna make it, and bottom line truth is I don't. I think she's disposable. But I do believe we're gonna get Lady Loki, the real Lady Loki, which is in essence Tom Hiddleston losing his body. This version of Loki will lose his body, this form, and have to be reborn as a female version of itself. At that point, because in the comics, that's when Loki became a quote unquote good guy, or actually on the fence, whatever, but more than not an anti-hero of some kind. And then eventually becoming Kid Loki, and Kid Loki becomes the god of stories. I do believe their work, because here's the thing, Hiddleston's showing the age, man. That's the same problem a lot of these guys had. They're starting to show their age. So something's got to give, and the comics have a built-in reboot system already ready to go, which is this form of Loki dies, but the essence that makes up Loki gets rebirthed or reborn in a new form. If Loki becomes the god of stories, then there's every possibility you could see them going to a very special place where formless entities get given new bodies. It's a long story from the comic books, but, and boy, are we getting sweaty or what? Anyways, all right, guys, so let's continue on. Finally, Dox is having a conversation when all of a sudden, Ravonna shows up.
Renslayer. Where's B-15?
She's setting in place her plan to control the TVA. But if we work together, we can stop her.
Ravonna shows up with Miss Minutes, and Ravonna lays it down and says, we need to take over this place as soon as, right now. And she offers everyone here who helps will have a life on the sacred timeline. I immediately knew, before Dox said anything, I went, you barking up the wrong tree. Dox ain't the one. Because they've already established who Dox's character is, and sure enough, Dox did not disappoint. Because what does Dox do? Dox backs up and is like, I see exactly what's going on here. And what do? Miss Minutes turns on that machine, the one that Loki used to threaten Hunter X5. Puts all of them in a big cube. They don't show it, but man, it's rough. It's the one and only Double G. And she crushes them. She crushes everybody except for Brad, Hunter X5, because Brad's he's such a Brad. He really is. And so he literally is like, he's like, all right, well, I'm in for a penny and for a pound. He's in. That's it. Literally, Ravonna helps them finish what they're all they're living, and goes, and then it's up to them, and they're going on, and oh my god, it's intense. It's intense. From this point to the end, it's a sprint. Everything starts happening. Mobius shows Victor that they have a cocoa machine. Victor's fascinated by the cocoa machine. He goes with one of the people, this and that. Finally, X5 shows up, and he vaporizes one of the other hunters, leaving, and he's like, "You're gonna come with me." He takes Timely back to Ravonna and Miss Minutes. Ravonna and Miss Minutes are like, "We ain't hearing nothing you gotta say." They're literally like two ex-girlfriends who've met and are going after their dude, bro. And sure enough, he's like,
Ladies, I think you're going to like what I have to say.
and he begins to explain to them the situation, what they need. Then you finally have the moment. In this moment, Loki, we cut to a different Loki. Because he's not wearing the jacket. We finally reached the moment from episode 1. So, because Miss Minutes starts locking the whole place down. Nobody can get anywhere with their temp pads. The elevators are shutting down. She's stuck in the elevator. She manages to hack through it, and she's going up the thing, but the door won't open, so she's prying it open. The other Loki's there on the other side, and you see our current timeline Tom Hiddleston, our Loki, comes around the corner. He sees the scenario. He's holding the baton, and he's like, oh, man. He turns it on, and he slowly creeps up, and just at the time he's supposed to, he vaporizes himself, which, if you remember from the first episode, sends him back to the Loom thing, which allows him to reboot and get better, to be able to get to this point. That's when the phone rings. You find out things are getting really bad. So then we cut to back to the meeting room where Ravonna was at, where she's got Victor Timely. He's explaining everything. That's when Miss Minutes starts breaking.
Someone's trying to reboot the system. I can't have access.
Oh yeah, that dirty little so-and-so, she's like, they're taking me offline, and she started breaking this and that. She says, wait, Victor, I have to tell you something. She can't not do the little jab in. Ooh, we've all know those exes. And she literally says, "You'll never be him," disappears. And then she reboots briefly into the original little time clock. And she's like, "Hi, I'm Miss Minutes. Would you like to play a game?" Or so. It's really, and then she finally disintegrates. That's when Ravonna sends dude. She's like, "You go find him right now," and this and that. And she goes. Oh, did I fail to mention rebooting the system and bringing Miss Minutes offline also makes magic allowed in the TVA. Yeah, man. So X5 faces off against Loki, and just as he's about to fight him, Sylvie grabs him by the head, and you see his eyes turn green. A second later, they all walk in to the thing, and dude, X5, bam, hits Ravonna, sending her straight back, disintegrates her. Obviously sends her to the end of time, whatever else. So she's going to be back where the tower thing is. So finally, they have the plan ready to go as best they can. Victor puts on the suit. He decides he's the one who's got to go. They open up the time doors. He doesn't last a second. He becomes ribbon like Mr. Fantastic in freaking Mirror of Madness or whatever, Multiverse of Madness. It was not a pretty sight. It was rough. Now I have a theory. My theory is this is the moment. Time is very cyclical. They've already established that. It's very Ouroborean. And I think that the minute he unraveled, he didn't just unravel and disintegrate. He unraveled and possibly, with his knowledge, either became energy, became knowledge, became something, but somehow Victor Timely's presence I believe he's been scattered across all the different timelines that are out there, and thus has given birth to all the Kangs eventually, and Victors, and He Who Remains is and everything. That's my own theory. No, nobody supports this. No leaks have come out about it. That's my theory. That's the end of all things. It explodes. The loom explodes. The fire of time, the fire at the end of time, burns the place to the ground as far as we can see. And then it's black. It's dark. And then you're back with the credits. Yeah, man, so there you go. Now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. Next week is the penultimate episode. I can't wait to see it. But until then, this episode knocked my socks off, man. This episode blew me away. With its consistency, I'm a time travel whore. I love that stuff. I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I thought Endgame got it right. This episode is my first 10 out of 10. I'm telling you, I'm not gonna fight it. I liked this. Everything from Miss Minutes eating it to all the gruesomeness that happened off screen. But yeah, man, comment below. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Did you enjoy it as much as I did, or am I missing something but I tell you what, this. And maybe it's got to do with the fact that it's Loki. It's a character I knew. But I'm ready, man. Let's see what comes next. All right, guys. We'll talk again very, very soon. I can't wait. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.